Good afternoon. Welcome to, this is the panel on the careers in government and nonprofits. I'm the moderator, Jay Goldberg from Marquette University. And we're going to start this out with some short presentations from each of our panelists, and then that'll be followed by a question and answer period. Our first panelist is Ryan Kelly, who's a senior research scientist with Battelle Pacific Northwest National Laboratory.
All right, let's see. We'll go with this one here. All right, how are you guys doing? So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes on my take on working as a research scientist at a national laboratory. And you'll see that each of us work in sort of different either nonprofits or government labs. And where I work is I'm not a direct government employee. Most of the large national labs around the country are managed by a contractor. So Battelle is a large nonprofit organization that runs our lab. So I guess what that means in practical terms is that if the government shuts down next week, I'll still be able to keep working, although a little bit hampered. And so I'm at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory over, let's see, right down here in southeastern Washington State. And within that national laboratory, there's a National Scientific User Facility called the EMSL, Environmental Molecular Sciences Laboratory, which houses a lot of large-scale, high-end research equipment that most individual universities can't have for themselves. So this is a place where users submit proposals from around the country to do research. And we have different specialization in molecular science computing, subsurface flow and transport, NMR. And I joined EMSL working in the mass spectrometry group, and now I run the microfabrication facility. So I do microfluidics research. I'm not a biomedical engineer, but work with biomedical engineers and end up doing a lot of similar research. So this is my career path. I got my bachelor's degree in biochemistry at BYU in 2001 and doctorate in 2005 at BYU. This is the title of my dissertation, Polymer Microchips for Capillary Electrophoresis and Electric Field Gradient Focusing of Biomolecules. Then I'm actually not exactly sure why, but I was just sort of drawn to the possibility of working at a national lab. I guess I saw it as someplace, and I still see it as someplace in between academia and industry. And so when I was wrapping up my PhD, I interviewed at the Naval Research Lab, at Sandia National Lab in Livermore, California. It's a branch of Sandia, and also at Pacific Northwest National Lab, where I ended up. So I did a postdoc, decided that mass spectrometry was very interesting, and there's an excellent mass spectrometry facility doing proteomics research there at PNNL. So I joined that group, did a 2-year postdoc, and at the end of that, was asked to stay on permanently as a full-time staff member. So from 2007 to 2010, I stayed in the mass spectrometry group, continued my postdoctoral, similar lines of research that I was doing as a postdoc, and then started drawing back upon my experience from graduate school doing microfluidics. And since then, I've tied the two together. Most of everything that I do combines microfluidics and mass spectrometry as a sensitive, label-free detection system. In 2010, the government stimulus happened, and we got a lot of extra money, this $100 million to add to our facility and purchase new equipment. As part of that, the microfabrication facility was long due for for an upgrade, and they asked me to join that team. And since then, I've taken charge of the microfabrication facility and continue my own research, doing combining microfluidics and mass spectrometry for single cell analyses, measurements of protein ligand binding, enzyme kinetics, and things like that. Just a couple of quick slides on some of the research that we're doing. We've really focused on developing some of the unit reactions that we need to make label-free, ultrasensitive chemical analyses happen. So this is 2 different streams. We're combining these in about 1 nanoliter droplets in an immiscible oil, and we can control, let's see where that mouse go. We can control the composition of the droplets. We can mix droplets with high speed, incubate them for extended periods of time as they travel in these flow streams, and then finally extract the reagents from the oil stream into an aqueous stream where we can do electrospray ionization and measure the content. So this opens up a lot of possibilities for in-droplet reactions, kinetics. We've done some proteolytic digestions in there. And basically, I'm doing this stuff because it's fun, and if I can get money to do it at a government lab, I can do it. So have another project doing single cell proteomic analyses, so developing again the processes for trapping, washing cells, lysing them in a isolated chamber, and then again, sort of, sorry, this video is a little bit on the raw side, but extracting the contents into of these cell lysates into an oil stream in parallel. So we're making all these droplets together and then transferring them after incubation over to a mass spec detector again. So that's sort of the specifics of what I personally am doing. Now to talk in more general terms, having been at a national lab for 8 years, I'd say some of the benefits of working there include a competitive salary. We get both a pension and a 401k with matching, which is pretty cool. Excellent insurance and things like that. And depending on how long you've been there, you get more vacation. So once I hit 5 years, I started getting 4 weeks of vacation, and you actually don't get up to this elusive 5 weeks until 20 years. But 4 weeks is actually a little bit more than I can usually spend. And then there's the environment. This is a highly collaborative environment where it's okay to work on a colleague's proposal and have them work on yours, and it's just very free, and we have excellent facilities and tremendous in-house expertise. So I don't have to be an expert at every single thing that I need for the project to go to completion like I had to be in graduate school at a university. There's, people way better at SEM than I am down the hall, instrument shop, machine shop, and then similarly, they come to me when they need microfluidics done. So and we have a lot of freedom to pursue our own interest, flexible work schedule, and I think all of that comes together to make a really good work-life balance. I like doing science, but it's not all that I like to do, and I get to, have a family, et cetera, with this sort of position. Some of the challenges of working at a national lab is that the available funding is tied to the federal government. And you may have noticed the federal government can be a little bit dysfunctional at times, and that really does directly impact us. So the first 5 years or so that I was there at PNNL, a layoff was unheard of. It was pretty much like it took dynamite to get somebody out of their position. That's not really the case anymore. The layoffs are rare, but they can still occur, and it just has to do with if the government has a sequester and they cut down the amount they're supporting research funding with, we feel that. So, and then if you're comparing to a university professor usually gets 9 months of their salary covered for teaching, and then they have to supplement that with research funding to cover 3 months of their salary, and then anything else beyond that they can support students. So a $3,000 research grant, $300,000 research grant at a university would have that professor pretty flush with cash, okay? They'd fund themselves, they'd fund a small army of graduate students, and they would have money for equipment, you know. Okay, maybe it's not, but anyway, that funds me, my time only at a national lab. It's not that I make that much money. It's this large overhead charge out rate, okay? And we need to cover that every year. So anyway, it causes a little bit of stress sometimes. But also there is an organizational structure. I'm in the EMSL, that National User Facility. There's also fundamental sciences, national security, things like that. So we have our organizations, but it really doesn't matter. You can work on a national security project if they want you. It's very free. But it can create some ambiguity that is a challenge for some people, and you need to be self-motivated. You also often need to contribute to multiple projects and learn to multitask. Just to illustrate this is my time card for last week, okay? So I work on different projects. Each project needs to be charged accordingly. And you can see, so there's a few of these projects that I am the PI on here in yellow, a few that I'm not, where I'm a collaborator on somebody else's project. But the main thing is that it's a lot of projects that I'm juggling in a given week. And some of these other charge codes have to do with managing the facility that I'm in charge of. So you can see I'm bouncing from single-cell mass spectrometry to imaging the nucleation and growth of nanoparticles, multimodal imaging of cellulitic degradation by bacteria. I think it's a lot of fun, but you can see there's some juggling involved as well. You can also see down here on the time card it says telework, and we're actually encouraged 1 day a week to work from home, which is a little bit interesting. We don't have to. It's sort of, does it work for your schedule? But they like to show the sponsor, our Department of Energy, hey, look, we're actually forward thinking and reducing emissions, and I really like that. To have 1 day a week where I can focus and catch up on the literature and write a proposal or things like that without all the constant distractions. So a little bit of advice. If you may potentially be interested in a career at a government laboratory, consider a postgraduate internship. These are available at, before this, I'd only ever heard of a postdoc, but at PNNL we have post-bachelors, post-masters, postdoctoral, research assistantships. And these are a great way to see what it's like to work in a national lab. And there's no guarantee of being hired at the end of that at all. But a lot of us that are there, that's how we got started, okay? They decided you were so invaluable while you were a postdoc that we can't live without you, even though you're going to cost us 3 times as much once you're permanent staff. And this is it. It leaves options open. Like I said, if there's a spectrum from academia to government or to industry, I think a position at a national laboratory, somewhere right there in the middle. And it really does leave your options open if you decide you want to go to industry or academia or stay in government. And then definitely focus on publications as a graduate student. And if you do a postdoc or something like that, keep focusing on that. I think, what you're doing early in your career, and I'm still fairly early in my career, but these efforts that we make right now are amplified through the rest of our careers. And, graduate school and a postdoc may be your very last chance to focus purely on research before you have to go out and chase money and do all that other stuff to stay afloat. So anyway, that's all I have, and I'll turn the time over to the next speaker.
Thank you. Okay, our next panelist is Jeanette Thielen, and she is the Chief Biomedical Engineer at the VA in Puget Sound.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeanette Thielen. I'm with the VA Puget Sound Healthcare System, actually the VA hospital in Seattle and Tacoma. And I'm going to be talking today about the biomedical engineer, careers in the healthcare environment, and careers in federal employment. A little bit about my background, a little bit about my hospital, the biomedical engineering profession, and as well as working for the government. So this is about me. I have a bachelor's in biomedical engineering from the University of Iowa. I've been with the federal government and the VA system for 20 years now. It was going to be my job after college before I went to grad school, but it turned out I loved it. I went through a TCF program, which is a technical career field internship for a year with the VA before I got set loose and to pursue my own career in the VA. I worked in Washington, D.C., Memphis, and now I'm the Chief Biomedical Engineer at the VA Puget Sound Healthcare System. I'm also a certified clinical engineer. These are our two hospitals in VA and for Seattle and Tacoma. We also have outpatient clinics. We manage over 400 beds and over 52,000 veterans. We provide specialty and primary care as well as have an ED, our main hospital, OR, bone marrow transplant unit, mental health facilities, spinal cord injury, and so forth. We have over $70 million in medical technology and a vast biomedical engineering department. So, biomedical engineering, if you haven't heard, it's the #1 job in America in 2012 in terms of growth and potential. And I guess the big question, if you hadn't realized yet, we do have an identity crisis. What is biomedical engineering? This is one of the many job descriptions I pulled off on the internet. Biomedical engineers apply engineering principles and material technology to healthcare, da-da-da-da-da. So we can do this in all sorts of fields. We're doing scientific research, academia and education, tissue and cellular work, materials, chemicals, design and manufacturing, basically designing new methods of providing health care. We're also developing standards and regulations, and also, with what I do in my field, working at the point of care with patients and clinicians. So, where do you want to take your biomed career? I can talk a little bit about healthcare and the environment, as well as the government. So, patients, providers, and biomedical technology, along with biomedical engineering, equals healthcare. And what do we call ourselves? Biomedical engineering in the VA. In the industry, they changed to clinical engineering, and now the new buzzword is healthcare technology manager. Either way, they're the same thing. A bunch of definitions, and I made up my own. A professional who works with clinicians to maximize medical technology effectiveness and provide key patient information at the point of care to optimize patient safety and improve patient outcomes. A lot of things that we do, from compliance for a medical equipment management program, which is required by Joint Commission for any kind of accreditation for the hospital. We look at technology from concept of a brain and a surgeon's brain of what they want to do or where they want to go. They want a hybrid OR in 4 years. How do we get there? We assess technology, integrate, become the project manager to design the room and put the equipment in, help integrate it into healthcare medical records, provide education, become a medical safety officer when it comes to regulations and recalls, a maintenance manager to make sure that's working at optimum capability, financial analyst by making sure we can pay for the technology as well as maintain that for healthcare, and an overall problem solver, eventually becoming a department manager and supervisor of people and part of the interdisciplinary care team. I sit on hospital committees from everything from resuscitation to to just what do we have to do in terms of what do we buy EMS to support the hospital and keeping our floors clean. Here's some more information about clinical engineering if you want it. AME is a good organization, as well as the American College of Clinical Engineering. It's a journal in clinical engineering, and is a program for certification for clinical engineers. And let's talk about biomedical engineering in the VA. That's a group of us, a very blurry group. I must have opened up a small picture, but just a handful that attended a national conference at AME and continued on to have a meeting in Washington, D.C. for VA professionals. About the VA and our mission, we obviously serve those who served for us in our country. We have over 1,400 medical facilities across the country and in various U.S. territories. And we provide patient care to our veterans. We have over $6 billion in medical technology that's growing exponentially. We had huge job growth in terms of we have opportunities for volunteer, internship, technical career field, and as well as careers from everything from managing a department, being a staff engineer, organizing project management like real-time locating systems and wireless technology to integrate, as well as integration of all medical technology into patient medical records. One way to get into the clinical engineering at the VA is through a technical career field program, which is available through several government programs. With the VA, biomedical engineers can start with a 2-year internship with the VA. We usually start announcing positions in March, and people have to be hired on by it's Monday now for September 30th. We're still trying to verify that ours is starting on Monday. So, and you can move on then after you finish your internship to a full-time position. Cool. So now let's talk about working for the government, the challenges and benefits. There's some unique opportunities in the field within the government in terms of research, as well as being able to sometimes rise quickly to become a manager. We have objective opportunities for growth and salary balances. Pay and benefits are pretty stable, though not quite what industry pays and can provide. We're a large employer. There's a huge network. If you start in one field, you start in the VA hospital, you want to move to Indian Health Services, you want to move to the National Institute of Health, to the FDA. As a government employee, it's easier to shift within the government once you're in. And it's a good place for recent graduates. Some of the types of job you can get: research, scientists, regulatory compliance, healthcare, outer space, and more. So I spelled outer wrong. Agencies you can work for: Department of Health and Human Services, like the National Institute for Health, FDA, and Indian Health Services. NASA looks for biomedical engineers, Department of Defense, as well as Department of Veterans Affairs. Now, how do you start working for the government? It's always not easy. Best way is start with usajobs.com, or .gov, I'm sorry. .com will get you there too. You can keep resumes online to apply for. You want to look for classification series biomedical engineer 0858, but there are other scientists and other classifications that you can look for, but that's for the biomedical engineer particularly. This is what our website looks like. So you look first, what you want to do is you go to that website, usajobs.gov, look and see if you're eligible for government employment. You might also be able to be hired under special hiring authority, like if you're a veteran. There are volunteer and internship programs you can do. Sometimes for no money, you just become a WWOC, what they call, work without compensation, which you're probably used to at this point. There's recent graduate and technical career field programs to start off, and then you have to make sure you understand the difference between a temporary, which is less than a year, versus a permanent employee who gets all the job benefits. So what kind of job do you want? Make sure, like you've already heard, adjust your resume to the job. Make sure you keep it on file at OPM at usajobs.gov. Show all your work experience, your schooling, your credentials. Gather all the transcripts and documents they ask for. There's also things called KSAs, which are knowledge, skills, and abilities. There'll be questions you can answer multiple choice or essay that talk about what they expect from you at the job and what your experience is. Make sure you officially submit your application and documents online. There's a word you can save all your documents at place, but unless you hit submit for that job, they don't go anywhere. And watch those deadlines. Deadlines, deadlines. If you miss it by an hour, too bad. So the hiring process and decision-making can be slow, or it can happen quickly. It depends on the type of job and what job series you're under. First of all, HR reviews all our applications first to see in their minds you meet our requirements. Then it goes to the subject matter experts and can be going to a panel or specifically a supervisor hiring you. We base our questions on interview questions on performance-based questions. So we want to know how you handle a similar problem in school, in your volunteer work, in your internships, and so forth. Then we can't talk to you, but we send our decision to HR, who then will tell you if you are hired. There's a pre-employment process once you're hired. Letter of intent, because we can't really say you're ready to work for us to pass all these qualifications. And as was said earlier, October 1st, new fiscal year, we need to make sure we have money. There are background checks and security clearances to go through, physicals sometimes, and a boarding process if you're a biomedical engineer, which is a hybrid Title 38, a blended Title 5 and 38. It's government terms. You start in a GSA pay scale for your job, usually a step 1, and there are job scales for your area on OPM's website. And finally, you get a start date and go through fun orientation. Now, life as a federal employee. There's a public perception of what a federal employee does or doesn't do, and the reality of the job. Reality is we do more with less, and you're busy, busy, busy. There are ethics and accountability things to look out for, as with any profession, but especially with federal government. The appearance of impropriety can get you fired. You have a probationary period that you go through the first year. You have your pay scale. You can move by step or grade depending on how you applied for the job and the way job was announced, and potential for upward mobility. You are working for not only the taxpayer, the president is your CEO, and Congress is your board of directors. That's a lot of fun. Washington, D.C., funding and politics. If you lived in a cave, I'm sorry you don't know what's going on, but right now we may not have funding come October 1st because we work in a hospital, we'll be required to work and hopefully get paid later. And of course, the pace of government. It's not always slow. Congressionals, if they want information, they want it yesterday. And you'll be scrambling to prove, and they want to see data, data, data. So it's the speed of government is not the speed of government anymore. It's the speed of yesterday in this information age. So either way, life is at BME wherever you end up. You want to continue your education. That's something I tried to do. Get involved in professional organizations is another way. Network with your colleagues. LinkedIn, all that stuff's a lot easier these days. Read journals and get published in journals. Even I have to do that. Look at volunteerism and activism in your opportunities for your job. World Health Organization is also a great place to look and take your vacations if you wish. And don't forget to enjoy your life as well as your profession. These places are places I borrowed information and got assistance from, so feel free to, and I will share these slides with anyone who is interested. I know I went through them quickly. Especially want to thank Jennifer DeFrancisco from the Richmond VA who gave me the template so I didn't have to try to design one for this. And I think we're saving questions to the end, so we're skipping questions. You feel free to ask me. This is my contact information. I can't bring your resume and get you a job like an industry. Everything's supposed to be fair and transparent in the government. So, but you can certainly touch base and make those connections to find out what might be happening so you can look for those jobs. Thank you.
Okay, our final panelist is Tom Keenan. He's a scientist too, and he's with the Allen Institute for Brain Science.
Thank you. Okay. All right, well, thank you all for coming. So I actually work for the Allen Institute for Brain Science, which is a nonprofit organization. It's pretty unique, so I'm not going to focus my talk today on talking broadly about what it's like to work for a nonprofit because our business model is very different. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm going to start off a little bit just telling you what the Allen Institute is, and I also wanted to share some thoughts as I just went through the job hunting process myself, and I'd like to share some of the knowledge and wisdom, hopefully, that I've gained through that with you. So the Allen Institute was founded by, everybody may know, Paul Allen and his sister Jody Allen. If anybody is familiar with Microsoft products, you would know that Paul Allen is the co-founder of Microsoft, and as part of that, he's now a very, very wealthy man. And part of his, he actually is one of the largest philanthropes that there is out there right now. Actually has contributed more than Bill Gates to a variety of different charities. And one of the things he's always been interested in is brain science and really understanding how the brain works. And unlike the Gates Foundation or some other nonprofits, he decided he didn't really want to go to a grant funding model or to fund a couple labs. He actually wanted to create his own organization. And so he created what is essentially an industry-like model for doing nonprofit research. And so we were founded in 2003 with the mission to accelerate understanding of human brain health and disease. And the questions that we're really focused on are, first and foremost, was what the brain looks like. And for that, some of you may be in this area know about the Allen Institute brain atlases. So basically taking histological sections of mouse brains, thousands and thousands of them, and looking at all the different anatomical sections and also looking at all the different gene expression within these brains. Now we're looking at new questions such as how does the brain form? And for this, we're starting to use developmental animals and also some humans for atlasing, and then also doing modeling with stem cells. So actually using human embryonic stem cells to try to model neural development in a dish. And then perhaps some of the most exciting work we're doing right now is how does the brain work? And for this, we're using a lot of electrophysiology and actually trying to understand how the visual system actually encodes information. So how light is received from the retinas and is processed through the brain and the visual areas, and then how the brain understands that and stores those signals. So if any of those kind of questions excite you, I definitely encourage you to look at the Allen Institute website. We have, if you may not know, but in 2003, Paul Allen gave about $100 million to start this institute, and that operated for about, that amount of funding, let them continue until about 2010. And in 2010, he decided, all right, well, it sounds great. We did this atlasing now. What are we going to do next? And they came up with a whole bunch of proposals, and he decided he's going to contribute $300 million over the next 4 years to then continue these kind of scientific missions with promises of many hundreds of millions of dollars more if we're successful at meeting our milestones. So we are in a rapid growth phase right now. So I highly encourage you to look at the website. Something that's really unique about the Allen Institute is that the strategy is really to take research that you might be doing at a university, but then scale it to really high throughput. And the idea is to create really large data sets that then we basically publish on our website. Anybody can download the information. We collaborate with people. It is there for the scientific community to use. That's the pure mission. So that for anybody who likes the warm, fuzzy part of working for a company that actually does something good for the greater good, Allen Institute might be your company. The things that I like working about there, obviously, you know, that we're paid at industry level scale or very near industry level scale, and all the benefits that go along with that, unlike what I spent many years as a postdoc and a grad student, and pay is not so good there. But what I really like about the Allen Institute is they've assembled just a really fantastic group of very smart people. It's a lot of fun to work there. And unlike other places where you might have to apply to a government organization to actually get funding and then therefore try to match their idea of what good science or what scientific direction should be, we actually let the science drive itself. Paul Allen's given us $300 million. We let the science lead us to whatever directions we want to go in, and that's incredible freedom that you really can't ask for. So I'm going to put my email address up there. I'm happy to talk about the Allen Institute with anybody who might be interested. But I'd like to transition to some advice, career advice. So of course you're like, you know, who's this guy? What does he know? So first thing I'd like to do is establish a little credibility with you all. So I started off as a chemical engineer and biochemistry major out of University of Wisconsin. And then proceeded to go on to choose a career in bioengineering. And so then I went to bioengineering here at the University of Washington. Following that, I had children and a family and decided that I really wanted to be closer back to Wisconsin, so I moved back and started working in the stem cell field, specifically and so started working with stem cell researchers back at the University of Wisconsin, where then progressed from postdoc to a scientist when I got my first grant, started running my own group, and things were going along until all of you know this big recession thing that we had, where funding was lost and people stopped hiring. But what I kind of try to convince you of is that I've had positions in a variety of different areas at a variety of different levels. So as a chemical engineer, fresh out of undergrad, for a while I worked with a company called Ecolab, which makes industrial soaps and consumer products, which you may or may not have heard of. Certainly anytime you go to the bathroom and use the foam soaps or things like that, or go to a hotel, most likely there have been soaps made by Ecolab. As a grad student, I was heavily into entrepreneurship, so I did a lot of won some business plan competitions, thought about commercializing my own technology, just ended up working out. And then when I got to Wisconsin, I realized there really wasn't much industry in the Midwest. And so started looking for faculty jobs, and so I spent 3 years on the faculty job market. After the recession and the challenges of finding a faculty job, I then started applying for industry jobs, and I applied, got interviews at a variety of different companies from small, medium to large, and ultimately I found myself at the nonprofit Allen Institute for Brain Science. So hopefully this will convince you that wherever you're coming from, I may have some insight into where you've been. All right, so career advice. First and foremost, I think I'd like to just convey some of the skills that I think will really do everybody a lot of good going forward, and things I wish somebody would share with me when I was at your stage. So the first thing is developing a plan. And from satellite view, with regards to your career search or any projects that you're working on or your research, really understand where it is you'd like to go, and especially look at the environment that you're in. I think a lot of people just blindly go into the next step. So if they've been in undergrad, they're like, well, I went to grad school because that's the next step of what to do. I don't really know where I want to be. It's like one of the worst formulas that you can have for actually being successful. You need to understand what the market is right now for the field that you're interested in going into, and then kind of have a plan of how you're going to get there. One of the great examples I just heard on the radio the other day about market trends. So everybody's probably heard that there's been a nursing shortage forever and ever, right? And so when the recession hit, a whole bunch of people went back to nursing school. Well, they were kind of basing their decision to go back to nursing school based off of those current trends, right? All the things they had heard about nursing shortage. Well, what they didn't calculate was that nobody was going to retire, right? The people that are now in nursing are not going to retire. And so now there was this huge compression, and people who were new graduates got out of school and then couldn't find a job in nursing, despite the fact that there's this nursing shortage, right? So they timed that really, really badly. So it's important to recognize that and realize that trends are also cyclical. These people are eventually going to have to retire, and at that point, there will be jobs available. So making sure that you're flexible and in the right area and the right time is important. So on the ground, this is one of the things that I wish somebody would have shared with me in my research, because I would have avoided lots of dead ends and lots of wasted time. First off, define measurable goals. Things that actual numbers that you can get a hold of or quantify, or some sort of conclusion you really want to draw, and then develop a strategy with contingency plans. One of the most important things that I wish I would have learned was that to set deadlines for key go and no-go decisions. A lot of times it was just like, well, we'll just keep working on it, endeavor to persevere till it's done. And you ultimately end up at the day, you realize you probably went down the wrong track a long time ago, but now you're so invested into it, you can't back up very easily. So, all right. And then in terms of execution, use the most effective strategies. This is one of the things, especially as I got more and more skilled, I started thinking that I had this fantastic hammer, right? Like I was specialized in microfluidics and axon guidance, and everything looked like a gradient generator to me, and I was going to go out and just solve the world with these problems. Problem is a lot of those applications that wasn't really the suitable tool. But because I was empowered with that one, everything looked like a nail, right? So try to back yourself away and think of things more holistically. Also capitalize on individual strengths. So you're particularly good at one thing, and those things that you're weak at, find someone else to do them, collaborate with other people to do them, or, in all worst case scenarios, train yourself to do them too. But really, really focusing on working as a team and working together on all your strengths. And then, of course, review. So both internal reviews, looking at your project, did you meet your milestones, those kind of things. And then also sending it out to someone who's an independent to really assess whether or not you're making progress in the ways you think you're making progress. All right. This is the one that I think that I still continue to face challenges with, and probably Dr. Golden here probably also does too. Anybody who's in a large organization, just be professional. And the idea here is that you don't have to be friends with everybody you work with, but you do have to work with them. Respect is important. The hard part for me was that it may not be mutual. So sometimes you have to work with people who don't respect you at all. Patience, that other people's deadlines and capabilities may not match yours. It may take them longer to do things, and you have to give that some leeway. And then communication. I think this is important that you effectively and honestly communicate with people, both good news and bad news. So compliments when they do things right, and hey, I'm sorry, Jim, we don't have the money for you this year. I'm going to have to let you go. So, all right. In most of my experience, pride has been the absolute obstacle for a lot of productive interactions. And it's really those people that understand that give and take, that collaboration that are most successful, whether it's in academia or in industry or government or nonprofit. All right, so to the nuts and bolts now, probably what you want to know, getting that job. The advice I got when I was in your stage, either at undergraduate level or a graduate level, was, all right, here's what you need to do. You need to develop a 1 to 2 page resume, pretty scannable. Go on people's websites, cold call, open apply to online websites, and on Monster or Indeed.com, and then just network. And I was like, okay, well, how do I? That's great goals, but I don't really know how to actually put that into practice. So the secret, you might want to write this down. The secret that I have learned, there is no secret. And for those of you who are less spiritual, maybe more mathematically oriented, there's no formula. My experience is not going to be your experience, and you have to figure out your own path. But there are certain things you can do in terms of getting a job that can make you more marketable, and at least give people an honest understanding of who you are and what your capabilities are. And hopefully I can give you a little insight into that. So 2 things I want to talk about is the resume, or the CV, if you're more academically directed, and then networking. So the resume, so I've applied for academic jobs, I've applied for industry jobs, I've gotten interviews at both, and I'm now gainfully employed in an industry-like job, so I hope I have some sort of credibility here. The format is different, but for the most part, the content is exactly the same. It's slightly, it's about how you word it and how you shape it. So in academia, you can be a little more loquacious, you can be a little more nuanced, and a little bit more far-reaching and inspirational. In industry, they're really about brass tacks. They want to know what you've done, what you've accomplished, how much money it took, and how fast you did it. Nonprofits, that I can't globally speak for all nonprofits, but for ours, we're more industry-like. But I think it could be either, depending on what the culture is like for that particular nonprofit. All right, so the resume and the CV letter, along with the cover letter, is advertising. I don't like to use the word salesmanship. You're not selling yourself, because it kind of implies to me that you're maybe skewing the truth. You're just advertising who you are honestly. One of the best pieces of advice I got from a friend who was a consultant at McKinsey and then went on to be a regional director at Becton Dickinson. He said, Tom, on your resume, the #1 rule would be to show that you can get shit done. #1, they want to see you can get things done. Sure. Design and implement good strategies, that you work well with others, and then you can manage and mentor. And ultimately, regardless of where you work, they want to know you can make them money. Either that's money research that gets them another grant, or it's bringing grant dollars in if you're an academic. If you're in industry, it's another product. If it's a nonprofit, it's ways to justify to your funding source that you should continue your mission. And then ultimately sell your strengths. So I'm going to go real briefly through just my original when I wrote when I was ignorant of writing a good CV, and it was, if you can see here, is my description of exploring whether engineered gradients of FGF2, blah, 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 can recapitulate the defined regions of proliferation and neurogenesis observed in developing human cortex. Sounds romantic. When I finally got together, and what actually was effective at getting me academic interviews was I discovered that FGF gradients can localize neurogenesis to 3D neural stem cell cultures. I optimized IPS differentiation protocol to enhance motor neuron generation. These kind of like action words, accomplishments, real measurable things that I could point to. And then in industry, it's even more dense, right? You now have to compress this 8-page CV potentially down into something much smaller. And so you can see there's all kinds of things about grants gotten and how much it was and how many people I employed. So concise, Action words, measurable achievements. Can I just go a couple of minutes over? Okay. So for networking, my rules for networking. Every contact is a good contact. You have no idea who these people know. So work every contact you can. I had an undergrad that worked for me whose stepdad, or sorry, his uncle, his aunt had married a guy after a while, and he was actually the president of Promega, the CEO, Bill Linton, which is, if you're familiar with molecular biology tools, this is a very large corporation, and this guy who just worked for me happened to be related to him. So I would never have guessed that. It's good to have good relationships and find out these things about people. Every contact is a good contact. Like I said, be honest. It's advertising, not selling. This is the one thing I've just called it being a giver and a taker. So when you go into networking events, a lot of times most of the people there are takers. They want something from someone else. They're not really ready to offer anything to anyone else. And as you know, just from human interactions, no one's going to give you something. You're not going to feel very inclined to give them anything either. So being a good giver and a good taker is really important for good networking. You have to have something to offer, or be willing to offer, or take an extra time to reply to an email, a moment of your day to actually talk with a student or somebody who's interested in what you do, even though it's a total pain in the butt and you don't have time to do it. Take the time. And the goal for every networking interaction should not be just to get a job. It should be to form a lasting relationship. Try to find out, I think what the panelists were talking about here before, about finding out what the industry trends are like. What's going on? What's like I talk to people, at Pfizer or Novartis or Amgen. What's going on at your company right now? Oh, hey, we're going through this huge reorganization. A bunch of our drugs went off patent. We're all like having a crisis. I mean, you're not going to get that at the first phone call, but as you develop a relationship with people, they will tell you the information of what's going on. Oh, but our San Diego division is hiring a ton. Oh, great. Website, San Diego. I'm going there, okay? So, and the idea, nobody wants to be called up and asked for a job. And the other thing too is these, like I said, all these market trends are cyclical, right? So that person you've contacted, and you talk to them about a specific job, they're gonna be like, well, sorry, the job didn't work out. There's so many things that they can't control about whether or not you get that job. But if you actually form a lasting relationship, when a job comes up that they do have some control over, or that is a better fit for you, they will contact you if you form a relationship. With a job, it's a one and done. With a relationship, you now have this ability to leverage your interaction over a long term. It's also good to check in periodically with your contacts. Oh, I talked to you 7 months ago. Just, hey, so you want to see how it's going, just to keep updating. So for tools, networking events, if you're good and extroverted, or everybody should kind of get a little more extroverted if you're not already. I really recommend, it's uncomfortable to go and attend these things by yourself. It's hard to be with your friends and then to go to talk to someone and, just really be able to mill around effectively if you're with a group. Plus, you as a group are much more intimidating than you as an individual. LinkedIn, fantastic. Please use this. If you've not used it, build a really solid LinkedIn page. When I'm hiring people, that's the first thing I'll go to. If I can find their Facebook, I'll do that too. But I like LinkedIn. It gives them an understanding of what their professional persona is. That said, it isn't Facebook, so please don't put pictures of yourself with your cat, or like a picture that you've cut out of yourself standing next to some friends at a wedding. I know you look nice, but take the time to go have someone take a nice headshot of you. It doesn't have to be professional, but look professional. Treat it as a resume, like you're sending out a resume to people. And structure it like I just described. Very concise, to the point, lots of accomplishments, measurement goals. And what the nice thing about LinkedIn is you can actually solicit recommendations from people that you've worked with. And that really goes a long ways for as a hiring manager for getting a job. It's also a fantastic way to find out, I think as the panelists talked before, about who's connected to who's connected to who. I've contacted tons of people at really great companies simply because I've had connections, like a second or third connection with someone else. So it's good to do that. Final thoughts, job hunting is work. Give you an idea, academia, 2 years, 70 applications, 4 interviews, and I got no offers. It's a lot of investment in time and energy. If you've ever put an academic application together, it's a lot of research plans and descriptions, and it's almost like applying to college. Industry, 6 months, 46 applications, 6 interviews, and 2 offers. This could take you a significant amount of time, both going out and interviewing, just preparing your materials, having phone interviews and second phone interviews, and going for a third round of interviews. It's a lot of work. So be patient. This is the hard part. I think for everybody who's not been through this process before, it's very personal for you. It's your whole livelihood. It's a question of whether or not you can eat next month. But for them, the goal is to be as impersonal as possible. They want to make a choice based on what their needs are, not about who you are. It's great. They want to make sure you're a good person and fun to work with. But realize there's a lot of things that are at play. It's not just about whether your skill sets match. It can be politics that are involved. It could be funding decisions. You just don't know the dynamics of the hiring managers or the faculty selection committee. It's pretty contentious. Always be gracious and be professional. Professional circles are small, and you are going to see these people again, most likely. So be courteous. Realize that it's not personal. You're a great person. You have great skills. Be confident in that. Their rejection of you, or their 70 rejections of you, or 116 rejections of you, are totally okay. It's just the way it goes. So, that's it. So.
Well, we've heard a lot of really good advice, and now I'd like to open up the floor to questions. So if any of you have questions, raise your hand, and then there'll be a mic, yes, that will be handed to you so everybody can hear your questions. Any questions? Okay.
So I'm Alice Rocca from the University of Washington, and I'm a grad student. And I have a question sort of for all of you, but more specifically for Tom at first, and that is the collaboration that you do with other institutes, say the Fred Hutchinson Institute or the University of Washington Institute. I know you said you do some publications, but how much publishing do you think you do versus an academic?
Okay. So at the Allen Institute, we do collaborate with other institutes or other organizations, including university. My particular job role is not very heavily focused on publication, but a large portion of our institute is. So I guess your question was, how much do we collaborate with other institutes?
How much does that manifest itself in the publications with others?
Oh, that I have no idea, as I don't publish. I think that where there's natural collaborations, we definitely collaborate. And in terms of authorship and shared publications, that, the more the better, especially the higher impact, the better. So it's a very giving environment in that sense. Because our mission is to give away all of our knowledge, we're not as protective as maybe an academic institution might be, or an academic lab might be, and not revealing things. We're like, it's already published on the website, so here you go.
Yeah. So I guess publishing is important, and collaborations are important where I work. In as much as you need, we don't go looking for artificial collaborations. It's whatever is needed to either get that funding or to get that project done. So they're important. Most of my collaborations are internal to the laboratory, across the lab. But that's not always the case. And as this scientific user facility, there's sort of this natural collaboration that forms with users applying, and then we sort of automatically become their collaborators as they're doing part of the work and we're doing part of the work at our place. So, but yeah, it's important everywhere you go, I think.
Well, it may not apply to what I do, but I know a lot of the technicians in my program have collaborated with the physicians, and certainly the technical work that they do with the equipment, and they leads them to be published in the paper as well.
Another question.
Hi, I'm Betsy Campbell from Georgia Tech, and I've heard it described that academia is knowledge-driven and industry is money-driven. What do you think government work is driven by?
Money. That's what, I was kind of protected as a postdoc there at the government lab, and then really, like I said, we're expensive. It takes a lot of money just to be there, and at the end of the day, the people that are there and stay there are the ones that remain funded, and that can be as a principal investigator bringing in grants, or if you're just this great collaborator, or you have this unique skill that everybody wants and needs on their projects, you don't have to be a PI to be highly successful and to move up the ranks there. But ultimately, it sort of does come down to money in a lot of ways. But that's my experience, and it sounds like it's very different just in this panel, and I'm sure even the three of us, even though we represent different spaces, have we probably don't represent all of it ourselves either.
I actually like to address that comment because I didn't introduce my background, but I spent 14 years in industry and now almost 15 in academia. And I have to tell you, this perception, your comment about academia is knowledge, and it's not driven by money, I have to disagree. The knowledge is there too, but academia is a business just like a medical device company. It's a not-for-profit business, but there are lots of concerns about grant funding, and they're dealing with the same concern. They have the same concerns that a company would have too, to make sure they have enough money to pay the payroll and to have enough money to fund graduate students and all that. So academia is driven in part by the money too. But like I said, it's not for profit. Whereas companies are driven not only by money but for profits, because especially if they're publicly held corporations, they have a legal obligation to maximize the investment of their shareholders. So they're supposed to do things to increase profits, whereas you don't have that in academia. So they're not profit driven, but money is a big issue in academia. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay.
It's money, ultimately. And in some senses, now with the situation of public education being defunded as fast, this is maybe too political, but pressure is even more on professors now because universities using the overhead that they get from grants to support the education missions and some of the other missions of the university. So money's a big deal.
And in my industry, I would agree. You have to take care of funding from a different perspective in healthcare. You take advantage of those flush years to invest in new technology and be able to maximize what you can get out of them. And then in the lean years, you have to be able to keep that technology moving and still produce the results, though, no matter what. At least in my job, it's money and results driven.
Okay. Another question.
My question is for Ryan. I'm Ryan Hansen. I'm a postdoc at Oak Ridge National Lab. And I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about what your transition was like as a postdoc at a national lab to a permanent hire. What did you do as a postdoc that led to a permanent hire? And was there a position that was created for you based on the skill set you had, or was it based on publications that you had as a postdoc?
That is a great question. And so there's two things that have to happen to go from a non-permanent position to a permanent position. One of those is somewhat in your control, and the other one is not at all. And so when I was so that was in 2007, and this proteomics group that I was in was exploding. And so really, for me, it was like if you did a good job and they liked you, they would hire you because they were growing. Now, in that same group, you could be on fire. You could have 10 publications as a postdoc, and they're contracting. So that part of it. But that said, as I was looking for postdocs, I was looking kind of through the postdoc to a permanent position. And as I interviewed at these different places, the ones where I felt like either I didn't want to live there permanently or I didn't think there would be an opportunity to stay there permanently. I should mention I had 3 kids at the end of graduate school. I have 4 now. and I did not like moving very much. It just becomes more of a hassle with more kids and stuff. So I picked the place, and I really pumped the director of that, like, and if I do a really amazing job, I can stay here, right? There's a good chance. And of course, he couldn't commit anything, but I was so determined that I wanted the opportunity, at least, to stay at the end of that I bought a house right when I got there at the beginning of my postdoc, and I just went crazy to get results and open up a new area for them. So I did. I published quite a bit as a postdoc, and I got a couple of patents as well. And so they, it was like a no-brainer, and for them, and it was also right at 2 years, which is pretty hard to do. Usually, just because of how much more expensive you get, they push you to the full end of 3 years or even beyond that. But in my case, I think I got lucky stumbling across some good research, and lucky because they were in a position to just absorb another person, no problem. So, yeah, anyway, thank you for that question. Sure.
I just wanted to make one comment that if you are thinking about a job at a national lab, you probably want to think about doing a postdoc there first, because they do hire from postdoc. Doing a postdoc somewhere else and then trying to get into national lab is much more difficult.
Yeah.
You might have to actually do another postdoc first.
Good advice. Okay, do you still have a question?
Yeah.
All right, can you bring the mic up here? Just so everybody in the back can hear. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Aaron Short. I'm from the Ohio State University, and actually I work over at Battelle too, so cheers. I have a random question. So for individuals like myself who are going to be interested in probably more industrial, nonprofit, how would we get the experience while we're in school? So for me, I'm lucky enough to have the people I know at Battelle, so I've been able to set up mock fellowships and shadowing opportunities for myself to go over, see their facility, see what they do, help work with them to kind of see how everything's run. But if I tried to set up for maybe a summer program, if I went to my advisor and said, hey, Dr. Winter, I want to take 3 months off of doing research to go do this, obviously it's for the betterment of myself, but she has her research to work about. She's not going to want me to just leave for 3 months and then come back and try to start all over again. What would you suggest as far as, are there opportunities for that? I know you mentioned for the VA they have the volunteering things that you can do and stuff like that. Do you guys know if, I don't know, the Allen Institute, do they have similar things like that?
So are you in an engineering program right now? Okay. So a lot of engineering programs will have internships or co-ops. It's a great way to build experience. Allen Institute does have an internship program. That's a good way to do it. But even if you don't do an internship or a co-op, you could also develop just a diverse set of experiences at your own university, doing research for different people and different things, right? So it's developing, especially I think from, at least in my experience, biomedical engineers are most respected for their ability to cross between fields, right? To be that bridge, that link, and be able to speak both languages. So showing that kind of diversity, but then excellence within each one of those experiences is a good way.
And like was mentioned here, what somebody that's hiring you ultimately is looking for is, can you get stuff done? Or I think stuff was the word, right? So it was close to that. And if this internship is going to enhance your ability to get stuff done, then that would be, I would say, a good thing. If you're just going, getting experience, and it's actually detrimental to your graduate research, I might not be as encouraging. Ultimately, you're building a package, you're building a resume, and if it enhances your ability to get things done, that if you're going to get knowledge that you could bring back to your graduate research, then, but if it's kind of tangential, maybe not as fruitful,
And since I work at a hospital, it's a little different, our volunteering. We have everything from the pink ladies that hand out cookies and coffee too. We have we had a PhD student working in our biomedical engineering shop, even fixing medical equipment, getting a little more hands-on experience and cross-training in that. And to people who volunteered and went through our electronics components to see what and get us organized. And yeah, again, getting things done. I'll use the third term here. Will show a lot. Initiative can open yourself up to other projects you might be able to do that may not be directly related to maybe where you want to go, but if you don't know where you want to go, it could be an in to someone knowing, hey, well, you did a great job organizing our all our resistors, because we don't use them anymore, really. Hey, how about help me figure out how many areas we're going to need for, in our RTLS program, wireless coverage. What square footage are we looking at, and getting more involved in that project. You don't know where a volunteer activity can take you. And a lot of those volunteer activities can be worked in between schooling, in classes. So that's, potentially something you can do. But again, we have the work without compensation. Usually you want to just not blindly go in hospital, but you could, and just say, hey, these are my skills. Do you have something like that? And they may even contact a research or a biomedical engineering area and see what opportunities might be there, or contact those people yourselves in a hospital or healthcare environment and see what kind of volunteer opportunities they do have. And then we have the recent graduate training program, which is a postgrad. It used to be called an internship, but we can't call it an internship because it's for actual graduates and it's a real job. So, and actually that needs to be taken and applied for like a regular position in the federal government. But many people who would volunteer then learn the system of how to apply, when the deadlines are, and so forth. So gaining an in any industry you're looking for is to try it out and make those connections.
Any other questions? Okay, we do have 5 minutes left. And we started 5 minutes late, but I think we'll finish on time so we don't mess up the rest of your schedule tonight. I just want one last quick question. I have a question for the panel here. You all briefly touched upon this whole work-life balance concept. You mentioned that allowed you to have a family, and okay, so maybe could you just each, for 30 seconds, just comment about, like, does your job require a lot of travel? Do you have to bring work home at night? Do you have to go in on weekends a lot, or does that just not happen? If you want to start, you could start, yeah. You might start with Jeanette. Yeah.
Oh, work-life balance. I learned that the hard way. Just struggling and realizing that, okay, I'm at a point where I need to focus on my life rather than always my work. But with my job working in the hospital, I'd carry a pager and then a cell phone 24/7. If something happened in the hospital, I would have to respond to it and deal with those issues, calm down those physicians, those nurses, and try to figure out what's going on and provide at least a temporary solution to them in the middle of the night, 2 in the morning. But it's easy to get lost in your work because there's always work to do. It's never a dull moment, I think, in any of our careers. But you need to find that balance or make those balance corrections when you find yourself staying late at the office. So,
Okay.
yeah. And sometimes your work may suffer a little bit, but then you have to pick it back up and readjust. I had to get married this summer, which was great, but with a new boss and down most of my staff, I missed a deadline or so, but I had to catch up and re-establish myself and that trust in my colleagues, and maybe because I decided I wanted to go away and actually not carry a cell phone in Hawaii. So, okay, next.
All right. So yeah, this is something that's pretty important to me, and there are people there at the lab that you can find at all hours of the day and night. I'm not one of those. I drop a kid off at school at about 6:40 in the morning, and so I get into work early, and I leave between 4 and 5 usually. And I guess, for me, in my environment, you have to call it at some point and pick it up the next day. And I just try to, with the time I have to allot to my work, I try to work as efficiently as I can. And because I have a lot of other demands on my time when work is done. Also, one really cool thing about where I work is kind kind of the flexibility in the schedule. They don't really care that you work 8 hours every day. They really care that you charge so many hours in the year. So you can go down in your time without eating your vacation too much. You can kind of flex if you have a doctor's appointment, you don't want to use any time or whatever. You can just not charge that time, work 8 hours one day, 10 hours the next, 6 hours the next, and it's perfectly fine. So I kind of like not having to be at work at a very prompt time. Now Nick in the back, who I brought with me, when he shows up at noon, I get a little perturbed, but it's it's all good mostly. All right.
So I guess I was also a young parent. I had 2 kids by the time I was done with grad school and had a third while I was a postdoc. I would say that the job I have now is certainly more flexible with family life and balance, whereas I don't think I wanted to work as much. Now I want to work. It's more fun. But I think separate from your personal decisions about it, it's about the expectation. And certainly in academia, the expectation is that you work all the time. You're on 24/7 because someone else is willing to do that themselves, and so you have to be competing with those people. In my job, and from what I can understand is in these places and industry as well, that's not the expectation. People expect to be able to go home at the end of the day. 5 o'clock, it's a ghost town. That's very nice for me. I don't feel obligated to be there. Whereas before, I'd have grad students that come into the lab at like 11. I'd be there since 7. But when everybody's still rocking along at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, you kind of want to still be there. And so you feel this like hour creep, right? It's always pinching, and I have a lot less family stress now than I did when I was in academia. So.
Okay, great. Now, I'll just add, depending on what stage of life you're in, when you first have children, you kind of want to be home. But my experience has been when kids become teenagers, you kind of want to go on more business trips. So something to keep in mind. Seeing no more questions and seeing that it's 4:30, I think we're going to end. So thank you for coming. And if you have some questions, we'll probably be sticking around for a few minutes. You can come down and talk to the panelists personally. Thanks for coming.